Thanks for jumping into the weekend rewind, rewinding it only 2 days to a conversation on our Talk the Walk live stream with Alan Weiss, the rock star of consulting. Topic is how to land international gigs, international work. I think there's at least 18 ideas here that you can implement from listening to this. Obviously, don't pick all 18, and you might have a favorite strategy. Mine is the opportunistic strategy, but enjoy the listen. You'll learn a lot. And if you try this out and you land an international work opportunity, let me know. Thanks so much, and I'll speak to you tomorrow.
Off the walk with every sip and laugh. Coffee's the fuel, martini's the craft. Conversations swirling in the cool night air. Talk the walk, we're going somewhere.
Good morning, Alan.
Evening, Leanne. I love our jingle. It motivates me.
It motivates me too, puts me in the right headspace.
Yeah, far better than Taylor Swift.
First controversial statement of the call. I'm sure there will be many more.
Only 12 seconds.
Yeah, 12 seconds in. That's a record, I think, for this. Hey, great to see you. I mean, last time we spoke, you've done so much in that time. You've been to the Galapagos Islands. Tell me what you've done since we've last.
Well, my wife and I went to Buenos Aires I had some business there, and then we, saw the place. I was there 30, 40 years ago, but she's never been. And then since it was sort of on the way back, we went to the Galapagos, and we flew to Quito and then Baltra. And we did the Galapagos for 3 days. And in the middle of the jungle is a Chateau and Relais lodge. Absolutely wonderful facility in the middle of the jungle. They had a 145-foot yacht that they owned that their guests went on and, went to another island, for example. We were fortunate, just lucky. We got the owner's stateroom. It was unbelievable. And the food was magnificent. The food was much better in the Galapagos than in Buenos Aires.
Well, look, I thought, we're connected on Facebook, and I thought I'd follow you for all your sort of business advice, but really I follow to see what you're eating and where you're going.
I'm a lifestyle guy.
You are a lifestyle guy, and you've also run a masterclass in Newport that you've just
It finished this morning here. Yes, 2.5 days, masterclass 4 this was. We had a great group, and it was tremendous. And that's another Chateau and Relais property out there. So we had just a fabulous time.
Yeah, amazing. Now, today's topic is pretty, current because you've just come back from South America around how to score international gigs. And if you are joining us live, let us know if there's anywhere you could work. Where would it be? Which country would it be? Alan, is there a country on the list that you wish you could, you haven't yet worked out, but you think I'd love to just go there and do some, not even work, maybe just travel because you've been to so many?
Well, for example, my wife and I really love Italy. My wife's Italian, back to the Medicis. And, we've been to Italy 12 or more times. I've never worked there, but that's okay. But, I've worked in odd places. I've worked in Denmark, for example. I've worked in Singapore. I've worked in Bora Bora. And so, I've worked in very interesting places where I also love to go. It's a great life.
Yeah, it is a great life. We love it. It's going to be fun sharing some tips on how we do that. I've worked in Singapore as well. Bora Bora would definitely be on my list in terms of places to work. So let us know where you would like to work. Just a quick one, Alan, before we jump in. I was at a business lunch yesterday. It was leaders and also fellow consultants. And Kat Mason, who hosted us, shout out to Kat, she went around the room introducing everyone, and she introduced me. It was really nice. And then she's like, oh, and by the way, I can't believe it, Leanne does this live stream with Alan Weiss. And that was part of my introduction. And people were like, who's Alan Weiss? She's like, he's the Oprah of our world. So I just thought you are, that's pretty funny. Yeah, that's right. Well, you're building my social proof as well. So, and I think, social proof has a lot to do with this stuff around international gigs. So it might be fun to kick off talking about our international gigs, and maybe the first international gig that we got. Alan, what's your story on this? When did you first travel?
The first international gig I got, that was when I was working with a firm in Princeton in the 70s, and it was a global firm. And so I remember the first trip I took for them was to Florida, and the first overseas trip, I won't count Canada, not out of lack of respect, but it's not overseas, for me. I believe it was London.
How did that feel at the time?
It was exotic, and we're talking in the mid 70s here, and it was wonderful, and it wasn't a world that is. I eventually, Leanne, I was in charge of Latin America, I was in charge of Asia, and then I was in charge of North America. And I had 36 square million miles of ocean under me. In fact, I ran Australia. The managing director in Sydney reported to me. but it wasn't a world then where everybody spoke English like they do today. How to play? I learned rudimentary Spanish. I couldn't conduct business in it in Latin America, but I could, get a meal in a hotel and find the bathroom.
Yeah. 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 Interesting. That's one of the complexities as well, obviously, working internationally. It's similar for me working in a global organization. So I joined a global company. I remember in my second week there, my manager was talking to someone, the senior legal counsel, and she's like, "Oh yeah, I think I'm going to Mongolia next week, but I'm not too sure." And I was like, "What? This is like a normal conversation." And I think working in a global business, my first trip internationally was to Canada. Um, and when you work in a global business, it just becomes a normal way of approaching business. And I think having that background makes it seem like it's normal. Whereas if you don't come from that, I think it would be kind of a really difficult mindset shift to think that you could possibly work overseas. Do you think?
Do you speak another language?
Just Australian English.
I was responsible for Japan, and not there wasn't much English spoken at the time I was running that part of the world. And we had somebody from the Japan office come to our office in Princeton, and people's habit was to scream at him because he didn't understand English. So they would yell at him, "Do you want a soda?" Right? And please, can't speak English, not deaf.
Oh, you see that overseas all the time, though. Or people try to like slow down their pronunciation and it's like a game of charades, really. Now we've got Google Translate, which actually can do it. I had a 30-minute chat with a taxi driver in Bangkok just through Google Translate.
Yeah, I have some notes on that I want to talk about today.
Yeah, great. And just shout out, g'day, Lada. Great to have you here. Lada's
Hey,
from
Lada.
Sydney, speaking internationally for the first time in June. And while I've had international consulting clients before, I'd love to call in more moving forward. Lada, let us know where you're traveling to, and congratulations on that. It's really exciting. Alan, is scoring international work, is there strategy involved, or is it just serendipity like a lot of my stories have been?
Well, it's both. I think you have to take anything you can get. So if it's serendipity, you have to be on the outlook for opportunism. You have to understand what's happening. But I'd like to just run this down rapidly here, not take a lot of time, but just to give people an idea that this is not as hard as it seems. Number one, you look for U.S., in my case, U.S., in your case, Australian, somebody else, Canadian, but you look for operations in your country that have extensions overseas. So, if I work for State Street Bank here, they had business, for example, in Sydney and elsewhere. You look for foreign operations that are here. So you're working for their extended offices, not their main office. You can work through U.S. consulates. So, for example, when my clients in Germany come here, I advise them to go to the German consulate in San Francisco or New York and get some connections for business. We can do the same with U.S. consulates or Australian consulates or whatever. If you're on a vacation and you're staying in a hotel, find out a way to talk to the general manager. It's usually not very difficult. And say, I would love to promote your hotel. I have people who would love to stay here. Give me some contact information. Oh, and by the way, I wonder if you could do me a favor. Who would you suggest I speak to here about a business affiliation? So you establish a quid pro quo. I did that once. I got a strategy assignment with the hotel. Hold global remote programs. So if you're doing a program, as Leanne and I are right now, make sure you have a global audience, which means you have to advertise it globally. When I do my Zoom sessions once a month, I have people from all over the world. Speak at international programs. Speak for free. For example, in India, they have a lot of these. And in other countries where they're doing an international symposium on X, Y, or Z, see if you can get on the agenda, even as a concurrent speaker. Attend global conferences. If you're traveling or you can travel, go to a conference in London or Paris or wherever it happens to be. Start now, in my case or Leanne's case, start with English-speaking countries. I wouldn't start with, say, France, which primarily speaks French, but South Africa speaks English, and Canada speaks English, Australia, New Zealand, and so forth and so on. And by the way, an interesting thing on my trip here in Ecuador uses the U.S. dollar. And English is spoken very commonly, so that's it's an easy country. Access trade commissions. Trade commissions will help you understand the connections you can make in other countries. Make your website multicultural and multilingual. Now, I will tell you something, and we all know now that Apple and other technology companies translate things instantly. They'll make an earpiece which translates for you. I just put AI on my site, and it's AI Allen Intelligence. It's at allenweiss.com. AI is on my site. And what really sold me on investing in this is that it can respond in almost any language in the world. Sanskrit, Arabic, you name it, any language.
Yeah. Yeah.
So make sure that you have those capabilities somehow and somewhere. My publishers have translated my books into 15 languages, for example. Write for international publications. They love to get input from people outside the country and their perspectives. And then the final thing I'll mention to you, and I have not vetted this, but just to mention to you, there are companies like Upwork and Toptal and others that they claim will set you up to work in other countries. So that's my quick list.
Yeah, cool list. And there's some stuff like the hotel thing I really like. When you're in a nice hotel, and on a recent trip to Thailand, I actually left my book for the general manager. I couldn't speak to him, but it was just a little way of getting in touch. The thing about opportunism, I think that's been probably my strategy. And my first gig, so the reason I didn't want to leave my job is because I got to travel internationally. And my biggest fear was, if I have my own business, that's never going to happen. But my first client was a client that worked in Singapore, India, Hong Kong. And that came out of a conversation I had so I was working for a business with a parent company, and shout out to Ray Lee, who might be watching this. We're connected on LinkedIn. We were having a cocktail on my last week of work. And she's like, what are you going to do? Where do you want to be in 5 years? And I was like, I don't know, but I love being in Asia. And then she's just like, oh, would you like to run our leadership programs out of Asia? I was like, yeah, I'd love that. And that's how it happened. But I think, I could have answered that with like, I don't know. I'm just, I could have answered that an infinite number of ways. But the fact that I was projecting that I wanted opportunities, to go overseas, like really just led to that to that option.
You never know. That's great.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was really great. So Lada shares that she's speaking at the Business Change and Transformation Conference in London in June. And one of the tips you spoke about, Alan, was just putting your name forward to speak at conferences. So yeah, I spoke in Omaha at the Gallup Clifton Strengths Conference.
You need to network like crazy at these because you're there. And so you can press the flesh, you're there. So you got to network like crazy and find buyers and introduce yourself and set up a subsequent meeting. The subsequent meeting can be by Zoom, doesn't matter. But you really need to do that. So, and you need to talk to the organizers and say to them, hey, I'm here to help out. I'm speaking for you. Maybe you're doing it for free. Who would you recommend I speak to? And can you introduce me?
Yeah. Alan, I know you talk about like the 5 different ways of getting business, and it sounds like networking isn't your favorite avenue. Like
networking is not my favorite.
It's not your favorite.
Fortunately, there were 6 ways. So I still have 5 left.
Fantastic. Lada's got a follow-up comment. What were Alan's platforms? Upwork. Is it Toptal or Top Talent? What was the second?
Upwork. Upwork is correct. And the other, I'll spell it for you. T as in Tom, O, P as in Peter, T as in Tom, A-L, Toptal. I think it stands for Top Talent.
Yeah, fantastic. Now, I think something that kind of might limit people is thinking, do you have to be like famous in your home country before you go global? I think I obviously know you don't need to be famous. What would you say?
Well, I don't think you need to be famous, but it helps. And so if you have books, if you have a strong brand, if you have a lot of IP that's used, you have a much better chance because people love to get quote unquote foreign talent, foreign expertise to have diversity and to have variety. So it really helps. And if you have a book that's translated, that really helps. I was speaking in Caracas years ago, and during the break in the morning, 250 people in the room. During the break, somebody ran out to a bookstore and got one of my books in Spanish and asked me to sign it. So I think part of the draw in my being there was I had 1 or 2 books at the time in Spanish.
Yeah, for sure. Now, again, this might sound a little bit, you're in America. The US has such a present, business, international business, it's all happening in the US. When a US consultant goes anywhere else, it's kind of like you've got that inbuilt status. Am I right or wrong when I say that?
Well, I think it's a big help. However, my clientele, my entrepreneurs are global. You know this, like yourself. And what I tell them is that the converse of that is that Americans love value. And they're not particular about where it comes from. There's not a prejudice here. And it doesn't matter how old you are or where you grew up or, your ethnicity or anything else. People really treasure value here. And Americans start to hear the same old, same old. you
Yeah.
know, McKinsey and Deloitte and the big companies, and then something catches on, servant leadership, which is as stupid as can be, but nonetheless, servant leadership, whatever it is. And so somebody comes in from another country and saes, well, here's what we're doing. And all of a sudden, people say, well, we can use that here. So,
Yeah.
and I'll tell you one more thing though about the United States. I have a lot of Canadian clients, and they ask, how can I market better? I tell them all the same thing: go south. You got 30 million people, and we have 330 million people.
Yeah.
What's Australia have? 30 million, 28 million? I don't know.
No, we've got like 27 million.
And so you want to go after major markets.
Yeah.
And the US is the major market. And so you can make inroads here quite easily. And the thing is, if you're from another country and you have clients in the US, it's easier to get clients elsewhere then again.
Correct. And my first US client, so this is, again, my opportunism, or just like the network relationships. I joined an online business community. This is back in 2020. And there's a forum, much like Alan's forum, and I'm just in there, just sharing stuff. And a lady in New York State was like, oh my gosh, you do this, you help people run better meetings. I've got a client that needs that. So she referred me into this client. And that's the client that ended up flying me over to New York to run some workshops. So again, it wasn't, I think we think, we need to put on all this effort, but a lot of we need to scale the effort, but it is a lot of the time, just personal conversations and interactions that
it's a relationship.
Like that. It is yeah.
And today with the advent of remote work and with the advent of instant translation, more or less, it is easier to do business with other countries than ever before.
Yeah. I'm wondering if that's the same case for America now. I think with all the policies about foreign work and stuff, but we're not talking about that today. Let's change topic and to say hey to Dee Dee, who's joining us. Always great to see you, Dee Dee, and let us know where you would love to work. I think you mentioned London in the comments. What do you think the biggest mistake is that people make when trying to expand globally?
They're too timid. They don't think enough of their value. They think it won't translate well, or they think that you have to have some kind of actually, you have an advantage being from outside the culture. You have an advantage if you've got, a good ideas and a track record, and you've got some clients in your home country. And so you can't be timid about this. You have to, it's like any kind of marketing. I just finished 2.5 days doing master class here, and you have to be bold. You have to assert. And so I think that's the big problem, because in the old days, quote unquote, it was harder to travel overseas, frankly. And there were more barriers, more red tape. And there were more problems accepting another culture and another language. Most of that's gone today. Oh, I was going to say with the exception of the French, but I won't, because that will irritate some people. So I won't say that. But
you didn't say that. That never happened.
No, I was just thinking. But I just find that I'm welcomed, and people are eager to host you, and it's wonderful. I've been to Australia 19 times. I don't keep going back because it's a long ways. You know that as well as I do, but I don't keep going back because I need the money. I keep going back because I love the place, and I don't only have clients, I have friends, and I tell a lot of Canadians I've been to more Canadian cities than they have. So.
Yeah. And I think your advice around being timid just applies to everything in terms of being your own boss, running your own business as well. Dr. Tracy Stanley, great to see you, Tracy. We spoke on a panel, was it last month or the month before? She says, I agree, you can't be too timid. Be bold. Lada says, yes, I have a blog post, how to get a job in Australia when you're not an Australian. Oh, so this is great. She also shares she'd love to work in France, doesn't speak French, so we just kind of joked about that. Maybe Amsterdam, Scandinavia, New Zealand, and Canada. And Alan, you spoke about Australia. I'd love to get you back. Something I'm playing with is an idea of a 2-day kind of a consultants convention. I'd love to get you in as a guest speaker for trip number 20. So we'll see if we can make that happen.
I would love to do that. I love Australians, because Australians are very, very much like New Yorkers. You can have an argument and you disagree, and then you say, well, okay, let's go have a beer. It's never personal. No, it's never personal. It's not polarizing. And that's what you just have funny accents, but otherwise it's just like New Yorkers.
Yeah, I feel like when I was in New York running this workshop, I was exotic for the first time in my life. People loved the accent. I was hamming it up. I was hamming it up.
That's a workshop you need to do. The hamming it up workshop. That would be perfect.
I would love to do that. I mean, yeah, but you're an expert in that too, I think. So maybe we talk about that next time. So let's just say, Alan, I'm a coaching client of yours. You say to me, Leanne, you have to go east. You have to go to the US. Let's just say I give myself 90 days to concentrate effort on building up a market in the US. What should I do?
Well, I think you should come up with IP that you think is exciting for your ideal buyers. Then I think you should ask yourself, what are my ideal buyers in the United States reading? Where do they hang out? Where do they appear? And that will tell you where to publish, where to speak, where to network, and so forth. I also think you ought to use all of your contacts in Australia who have contacts in America and really ring that, because all the Australians I know have contacts in the US. And so I would go to all of them and say, look, here's my plan. And the final thing is, and this is important for everybody watching this, when you get an assignment overseas, you tell everybody you know, because somebody will say, hey, while you're there, why don't you see so-and-so? And like you said before, serendipity, but sometimes you'll be introduced to someone who will make the trip even more worthwhile.
Yeah. And there really is, I know we live in this virtual world now, but there isn't really nothing more powerful than being in the country you're targeting and just meeting local connections there as well. So yeah, I love that. Lada says, I know we aren't talking visas, but that is a practicality, especially with current US crackdowns on visa breaches. Do your client sponsor invite you so you can get a business visa? That's happened for me for, in India and Hong Kong and Mongolia. I've had those sponsored visas. I don't know if we want to be on the record talking about this.
Well, no, look, it's really not going to be difficult. It's not going to be difficult. You might have to jump an extra hurdle, but it's not difficult. And I'll tell you something. I've been to over 60 countries, and I probably worked in 2/3 of them. But what I'm finding is I'm traveling today, including third world kind of countries, is that the immigration and custom process has been wonderfully mechanized, has been automated, and much of it better than anything in the U.S. And so you're putting a passport on something, or you're doing a retinal scan, and you're in, and they're not even inspecting luggage. They're probably inspecting with some kind of infrared devices. But I don't think that's a problem. And I think for a long time, especially people in Canada where I would speak and so forth, they tell me it was impossible to get into the US. And I would show them 4 or 5 people who were my clients who worked in the US all the time. And so my feeling is, if anybody anywhere is doing it, then you can do it.
Yeah, love it. And that's again about being not being timid and being bold as well. Melanie Gibbons, g'day, says the biggest barrier we have found is international clients or organizations like the UN have previous international experience as one of the criteria. Oh yeah, okay. So what she's saying is, how do you get international when that's the roadblock? How do you get it without?
Don't work for the UN. It's as simple as that. If you have a strong brand and you have strong IP, private organizations want to and can hire you. And they won't demand international experience. If you have it, they might consider it an advantage, or they might not even care about it. But if you're dealing with bureaucracies, like the UN is a huge bureaucracy, and they have irrelevant metrics, criteria, just ignore them, go around them.
Love it. Just have a side quest. And even look, I know one of the things, it's not a KPI for you, but I know that you love talking about it, is like the amount of global people that have signed up for a program. Like you have a metric, you're like, oh, over 30, and I was like, oh, okay. So I actually looked at my email list and I was like, how many different countries are represented here? And I had 62 different countries represented on my email list. And I was like, oh my goodness, there's people already within my network. Like that opens up global opportunities as well. And I think we're talking about international work. One of the things that I've been really bad at, to be honest, is networking in my own city of Brisbane, because I'm just so busy trying to pursue stuff everywhere else because it's more exciting for me. Yeah.
Well, I think that we're all eager to work close by, but travel really broadens us as well, and it adds to our value. And they're not mutually exclusive, So my wife and I flew these 13,000 miles, and it was a little bit. I travel well, but it was still hectic. Yet, I in retrospect, I would never have turned it down because it was so valuable to us.
Yeah.
And I think it makes us all more valuable to others in seeing these examples. And I'll tell you something, and you know this better than I do. When you stand on the Great Wall of China, you realize that every picture you've ever seen of it is insufficient. When you're staring at an iguana in the Galapagos, you realize that all those films you've seen of iguanas are insufficient. There's nothing like being there in person. So it broadens us and it makes us more valuable. And I think it's just a great development experience. Just you mentioned 62 countries. Just today on one of my passive platforms, I got somebody joining from Uganda, and that was my 60th country on those platforms. It also tells me that all of these people on your list and on my list, and I'm talking tens of thousands, they all speak English. You know that.
Yeah.
They wouldn't be reading the newsletter, for example.
Yeah, that's actually, really a really good point. And if you are here live, we're going to close soon. Just let us know if you have any more questions. I guess, in terms of entry points into various countries, did you ever, actually, no, I might actually go to this question I wanted to ask you because I've seen you, when you were in Australia last time in Brisbane, what year was that, 2023 or 22 we brought you?
Well, the Brisbane was the last place I was in Australia. So yeah, it's probably pretty recent.
Yeah. And I know you were basically running all-day sessions off the back of little sleep. We're talking about all the great things about traveling internationally, but I've run workshops off maybe an hour's sleep. 5-day events. Just haven't been able to get in the time zone. Have you had the same experience?
Yeah, I mean, I normally if I'm traveling to Europe, I have a day acclimation. If I'm traveling to the Far East or Australia, I allow myself 2-day acclimation. But that's in the perfect world, So I had a group I was meeting with in Sydney, and the plane was late. It was delayed by a day because of thunderstorms in the U.S. And then the time changes, the seasons change, everything changes going to Australia. And I got in at 6:15 in the morning for the 9 o'clock meeting associated that morning, and the group assumed I wouldn't be there. And so I went to the hotel, one of my favorite hotels. It's down on the rocks there. It's at the Park Hyatt in Sydney. It's by the Opera House. Oh my God, I love it. So I knew the general manager. I stayed there before, and I said, "Look, I got to be out of here again in an hour." So they got breakfast together for me. And I got cleaned up, and I showed up at the meeting, and they were flabbergasted. And they were just flabbergasted that I made the meeting, and they expected me to collapse. But when I'm with people, I get energized.
Yeah.
I mean, when I'm delivering something, whether it's a speech on stage or I'm working with a group or whatever, I really get energized. So you do what you have to do.
Yeah, you do. I find that it's not even the meeting. It's like on the way to the meeting, I'm like, oh no, I don't feel well. But once I'm in there, once I'm around people, it's like a whole new. It's like I've had just Red Bull injected into my bloodstream. Yeah, so that's great. Dee Dee shares a quick question. Sorry, around income taxes and foreign travel work. I'm working with a US client now. I just filled in a W-8-BENE form, which is around, I'm an Australian business and doing work in the US. I'll pay taxes here. It's different for each country, I imagine.
Well, I bill in US dollars and I get paid on US soil. I get checks or bank transfers. So I never get paid in a foreign country. And so I just pay US income tax. That's simple as that.
Yeah. Same. Well, Australian would be my equivalent. Joseph Jackson shares very interesting conversation. Good work. Thank you.
Thank you, Joseph.
Are there any specific topics you'd love us to explore in the next Talk the Walk episode? Alan, I would love, I can get the transcript from this and then pull out all the action items to take following this. And I might even share that in the notes for this. So thank you so much.
I'll send you this too, so you have it.
Okay. Well, I wonder what is faster, the transcript or you sending that to me? I would say Alan. I'd bet on Alan every time.
But if this is like Zoom and it made its own transcript, then you have it.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay. Adrenaline rush. Oh my God. You're gonna give Leanne a big head. Come on.
Yeah.
You're gonna watch it. Leanne will get really,
Well, my goal is that you're walking down the streets of New York and someone says, "Oh my gosh, Alan, do you live stream with Leanne Hughes?" Can you imagine? So funny.
It'll happen.
Thanks so much.
I said to the group today, I got to do this LinkedIn TV thing that Leanne and I do. And a couple of people in the group said, "Oh yeah, we listen to that."
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah, thank you. And we're obviously here because you're here. So Jim, Suzanne, Lata, Joseph, Melanie, Dee Dee, Tracy, everyone that's joined us today, cheers to you. Thank you for joining us for the conversation. And let us know if you do get an international gig off the back of one of the strategies we did today. We'd love to hear that. Lisa, great to have you here. Thank you.
Cheers.
Cheers.